And with that, I would like to welcome you to another Saturday Night Synthesis. I am your host, Alex. I'm trying to fan off the vapors from that dope song we just heard. But I'm coming here from Baltimore, Maryland. We have a great show lined up tonight. We have, it's going to be hard to top that. It's going to be pretty hard. But I'm a little optimistic because this week we have another guest musician coming at you again, courtesy of the Earth Modular Society, heckseven. Heckseven is an amazing musician. He's an amazing performer. He's sure to make sure everyone, I am told the internet terminology is calping for his song. That's what I'm told. I read it on the internet, so it's true. Then we're going to have a bit of a chat with him. He's going to play a song for us first, and then we're going to have a bit of a chat with him. Talk about synthesizers, music, design, but mostly ironically misspelled internet verbs. That's what we're going to talk about mostly. If you out there in the audience, thanks for coming, guys. Do you have any questions about the patches you see tonight from either of our amazing musicians? Put them in the comments of the episode. We will answer them. If you have questions about the equipment, gear, you can leave that in the comments too, or you could click on the notes for this episode, and all the gear is going to be listed right there. Also going to be, while you're checking that equipment, while you're clicking around those buttons on the YouTube page, why don't you like this video and subscribe to the YouTube channel? 920 more subscribers, and we'll finally get the sweet, sweet release of death. Just kidding. Or am I? There's only one way to find out. Why don't you guys subscribe? Speaking of things you can subscribe to, heckseven also has a YouTube channel. If you like what you hear tonight, go on his Instagram. If you don't like what you hear tonight, go on his YouTube channel too. It's a free country. You can do whatever you want. He has an Instagram too. We have an Instagram. Ours is Saturday Night Synthesis. His is heckseven. You would have thought I would have named something the show a little easier to say. But yeah, all the links to the social medias are there. All that stuff. And he's also heckseven, a man of many talents, a Renaissance man close to my heart. Has his own synthesizer-based video chat show called What the Heck? That streams on the Earth Modular Society YouTube page and probably other places too. And those other places are going to have links in the comments for this episode. And if there's anyone else that you like out there that you're really excited about listening to, synthesizers or otherwise, why don't you put it in the comments of the episode? We want to hear about what you all are listening to out there in the audience and what you think we should be listening to too. So why don't you leave us some notes? I'm really excited about having another guest. I don't know out there in audience land. Are you guys excited about having another guest? Are you looking forward to hearing from someone who's not me? I bet you are. I know I am.
I'm excited. For all of the above.
Thank you, disembodied voice of Jamie from Chicago, Illinois.
I'm unable to turn on my camera at the moment, but I'm here. I'm digging it. I love the opening act.
Jamie, you sound like God, like not like probably actual God, but like movie God.
Movie God, yes.
Like the bassiest, deepest. Like sounds like the microphone's like inside of your head.
Do you have a?
I love this guy so far. Okay, awesome. Thank you. heckseven, everyone. Thank you.
Well, we've said hello to everyone else. Let's say hello to the man, the myth, the legend, the gentleman who wishes I would stop referring to him as that, but it's too bad because I only tell the truth. It's Frederick Foxtrott coming at us live from semi-permanent exile on the longest of the islands.
Oh, well,
Frederick, how are you doing?
I just want to make sure that people don't think I'm putting you up to this. That's all.
Oh, no.
Good. I'm doing really well. I've had a long week as always. It's always good to be Saturday with my friends, and it has been super stressful. But that is why I decided to go into the dungeon of, I tried to absorb and replicate some early 90s like industrial kind of music. So I was hoping that I could get out some of that anxiety that way.
I liked it. It's the early 90s. It's either industrial music or heroin or both.
Or both, yeah.
Yeah. So what else? So what else were you doing in that song? It was a bit of a industrial beat. I liked. I know heckseven was talking in the chat about how much you liked the bass line. How much that dope bass line was. How'd you make that bass line?
Well, the bass line, it depends on. There's like kind of two dueling bass lines. There's one that's on the Little Fatty, which is just a single note arpeggiation. So that's like That's like the that's
the one.
Yeah, and then there's the
Mother 32 maybe.
Yeah, the Mother 32.
Yeah. Okay.
There on the Mother 32.
Yeah, that was the other one too. I'm gonna guess it's like multiple oscillators, slightly detuned, open filter, right?
Yeah, well, it's a single. It's actually, well, there's actually two oscillators. You're right. I have the warps, and I use that extra. I don't know if you are familiar with the warps, but it does.
I have no idea. I was gonna ask about the cool glowing light in the middle of your set.
The warps it's such a finicky thing, and then its parasites is even more like, it's one of those things that it makes either noise or it makes absolute like perfect sound. Right. So what it does is it does allow me to there's the right here there's the Stochea Rebel Technology Stochea. It's not a filter like you're saying. I mean, I'm not exactly sure what it's doing, but it makes it have a kind of a filter effect that makes the rhythm different than the one that is going on the drum beat, which is that kind of juxtaposition is almost like a polyrhythm, but one is the actual beat and one is just the sound coming in and out. If that makes sense, I don't know.
It does. That's really cool. And also, for those of you playing at home, that is heckseven, our musical guest tonight. He hasn't had an introduction, but I'm introducing him right now. That's heckseven. He's going to play a song for us. We're going to get to know a little later. Unbridled Enthusiasm is very on brand for the Saturday night synthesis. And I very much appreciate it. I really do, actually. The
other ththing I wanted to mention was the drum beat. So I don't think I've ever even talked about my drum machine. I have the Arturia Drum Brute, which I love, but I actually have a Dr. Rhythm, a DR 670 Boss. Okay, that has like. It has the all the old sounds from the 80s that's been kind of sampled into a digital package, and then it has every other kit you could ever want. And I was just going through, and I what was it? The sound was. I was like, that's like So Trent Reznor. Like, I was like, I have to. So like basically, and I'd already chosen to do kind of like something more industrial themed for tonight. So I was kind of like. I don't know. It was perfect. So, anyways, if any of you out there still have one of those, DR 670s, I got it playing pool. I've actually come into luck in so many ways for all of this gear. I've really lucked out in a lot of it. So
that's a very Frederick Foxtrott story. I won it playing a game of pool. Well, I think without further ado, I think it's time to re-welcome our musical guest heckseven, coming at us from 8,000 feet. In the state of Colorado. If you want to triangulate exactly where he is based on elevation, good luck.
comments right now. Well, there's no chat. There's no live chat. I want you all to make as much noise in the comments as you can. Usually when I do this, the chat is filled with claps or whatever emoji you feel like. As much as possible to the point where YouTube gets annoyed or Twitch gets annoyed as fast as you can. Let's do that in the comments. I want every comment to be auto-flagged as spam. Let's go.
Awesome.
There it is. That's right.
Love it, man. That was cool.
Woo.
That was freaking fantastic.
Yeah, and the people were blowing it up in the chat. You got Kenny P was dancing, and if you got Kenny P dancing, he also said you have to come back. So I don't know, clear your schedule. I do whatever Kenny P says. It's just wise. I have a question. I know Frederick really want to talk about is the sequencer, was it a pyramid sequencer? I was wondering if you could talk more about that and like how that plays into how you play the music. Because I know, Frederick, do you use a sequencer?
Yeah, so I use the Arturia BeatStep. I think that Heck has one of those as well. I'm not sure. If he's ever. I've never seen him use it in his chain, his signal chain or anything, or his CV distribution. But I know.
No, there's a reason for that. I have it. It's the best. It's awesome. It's an amazing sequencer. Get one. But the reason I don't use it is it's through, like MIDI through, which is a weird thing to say. Man, I've drooled all over this thing. It doesn't do MIDI through the way I like, which means I can't like have it sort of mid-chain. Like right now, switch views. My key step is going into the pyramid, and I have another full like keyboard sort of off camera, and that goes into the key step, and all of that just sort of is doing through. Like these are both on channel 1, this and the other keyboard, and that controls whatever track I have selected on the pyramid. So like it can control everything from one keyboard, which is really nice. But you can't beat like the BeatStep roller and looper bit right here. Like this right here is my favorite thing about this thing. It's awesome. It's pretty intuitive to use, but like especially for drums, like going through. So I used it out of my setup right now. It's a matter of time before I work it back in. It's just like MIDI chains are nightmares to work with.
I use it for I use the roller for like a millisecond.
Yeah.
My rule of thumb is if it has a MIDI adapter, then it's probably not your MIDI device. You know what I'm saying? Like I think that BeatStep is a CV. I mean, for me, I use it to control the DR670, the Boss.
Okay.
So like I use it for the drum machine, but everything else I just use it the CV ports for the. I haven't even. That's one of the things that I haven't even explored yet to see what else I can do with the MIDI as far as with the Mother 32 or any of the other kind of MIDI ready.
It's great. I mean, you've got 3 outputs with it on the same 3 that are with the CV CV outputs, right? You've got gate, you've got pitch, and I think it's called velocity on it.
Yeah, velocity.
Like you can use that third one for just about anything, depending on your MIDI mapping or CV mapping. Like it's a third set of controls, so you could use it to control a filter separately. Like it gives you another option per.
And then every drum pad has its own pulse as well.
Right, and actually I really liked it for drums. I used it heavily for drums, and I think the reason I got it in the first place was because of this not lit up Volca sample.
Yeah.
Because at the time it was 1 MIDI channel per like drum sound. So there's 10 drum sounds. So you could not change this about it, but it would take up 10 MIDI channels if you wanted to sequence it. And you could actually make the BeatStep Pro handle that nicely.
Right.
Elegantly. And that's the main reason I started with it and fell in love with the BeatStep Pro is that. Since then, I've installed the unofficial firmware, so a hacked firmware. It's now on, I think, channel 11 or something, and it is much better in terms of...
Oh, I didn't even know there was a bunch of... like firmware updates or hacks for it.
There's only one that I'm aware of. There's probably more if that person open sourced it, and I can share links after if you're still interested. But I think maybe the new Volca samples are assignable. I feel like the new Volca sample stole some of the stuff from the unofficial.
Right.
Because people liked it so much.
Well, I mean, why not, right?
Right.
That's the way it's done. So the pyramid, like one of the things I was wondering though is that's like something that is, I mean, you have to really get into that menu right? To kind of, it's not something that you, like for me, I'm like a big knob and button pusher, but like guiding through menus isn't my strong suit.
So it's not as much menu diving as you would expect. It's similar to, I would say, like a Novation Circuit or something like that, where there are like key combos you will want to remember, and you'll pick them up. And learning it is definitely kind of a mind F, but the actual sequencing when you first start with it is pretty breezy. There's some things I would change about the defaults of it, and the tutorials are pretty awful, but it works pretty smoothly for what I want. Like it covers all the major things I like. So it has, I think I can sequence a track of who knows how many steps I have yet to reach the limit.
Wow.
I'm sure there is one, but the BeatStep Pro, if you're not familiar, has, I think, a 64 step limit, which can be frustrating, especially at higher BPMs and things like that, when you want like that 128 to finish out a melody.
They do have the ability to chain patterns, so like you
do have that ability, but it's just
not the same.
It's not as fast or the same. It's kind of So you can do that, and it's similar. Like chaining melodies on the BeatStep Pro is like this weird hotkey thing too. Like you're going into different modes and things like that, and that's similar with the Pyramid. I would say it's pretty straightforward to use once you get the hang of the overall concepts. But I'm hardly ever looking at the menu outside or the little screen outside of like the BPM.
Okay.
The one thing I don't like about it, because I'm with you, I don't like menu divey stuff very much. I like to get to stuff quickly and have it very responsive. And the BPM, I actually have to hold down the BPM button and turn a knob. And there are some nice shortcuts, but it usually requires two hands. So like if I hit BPM and second and rotate the knob, I'll double the BPM or half it, which is kind of nice for some things. So there's like nice functionality like that, but you gotta learn the basics, and it keeps getting deeper. There's all sorts of MIDI effects. But the other thing I wanted it for, or two other things. One is I wanted it for the outputs. Like I have a lot of gear, and that means I'm using a lot of MIDI channels. And this has two MIDI outs that have 16 channels each. So like a MIDI out A and a MIDI out B. So I could have 32 MIDI devices potentially, right? And then there's another 32, I believe, via USB. So I can like sequence things on my computer or whatever.
I mean, it's virtually endless in that response.
Yeah. So it's expandable, and part of that again was that Volca. Like I wanted to account for that at some point, and it also has not really roller. Like it's not a roller in the same way as the
BeatStep. Yeah.
As the BeatStep, but you can, like, if I go into like the drum track and make sure it's lit up. Let's see. Well, let me turn on some audio because I can't hear it either. Yeah, so if I do that and hold down these, I can do some rolling stuff, which isn't the most performable in my mind.
I almost feel like that would, because at least it's more intentional. Like sometimes with the BeatStep Pro, when you're going to like change like a pattern, your pinky will hit the roller. And
yes, I've done that a couple of times, and that doesn't drive me as crazy as the looper. The looper, I actually have a hard time like getting it to loop at the spot I'm expecting.
Right. You have to practice that. Yeah.
Right, you have to get really used to it. Whereas this, like, I can hit a couple drums, and I know it's going to be, quarter notes, and there's even like thirds, so I can be like. So I can do some stuff like that, which is pretty rad.
I was actually going to say, I actually have my start, which engages everything, is a pedal that I built designed by Master Controller, Molten Voltage. It's a MIDI pedal that allows you to just start, stop, assign BPMs, has all that stuff with my feet. And because I play guitar, and so much of I'm really used to like using my feet to play stuff as well. I have my looper. I have like a Pigtronics Infinity looper, which is MIDI, which is why I can play like my little fatty, play it and then have it always hit, not deviate like in another loop or anything like that.
Right. When you hit the button, it'll be in
always,
the 8-beat loop, not like a few milliseconds before and end up like slightly off the rest of the song.
It's strange. It's like so it goes from the Molten Voltage master controller goes to the Arturia drum brute, and then from the drum brute it goes to the BeatStep, and then from the BeatStep it goes to my infinity looper, and then I have the clock out to my rig. So like it's really, I have a really crazy chain of a MIDI chain, but it's all through this. I've never actually talked about it. It's like this one. It's just like this red box that I have on the floor.
That's really cool. That's rad. Like, how do you adjust the BPM without bending over?
With my toes. I'm barefoot. I'm just like.
Oh.
Oh no.
Yeah.
I mean.
Yeah. So I'm gonna keep going on MIDI for a second. I have a rant for any manufacturers watching this. Like, MIDI through on every device you make, please. At least one. Like, the best thing I have with MIDI through is a module from Look Mum No Computer, and I think Sam has the same beef because there are 2 MIDI throughs on this one. Like, 1 in and 2 out. Like, that's great. Otherwise, you end up with like nightmare not cable MIDI splitter hell, which is what I live in. If you're producing, in particular, keyboardless synths, so modules, like if you look over here, I have a whole bunch, I have a few right here that don't have any keyboard, like there's the XD and the SEO2. Like, they're gonna need MIDI in. You might have another one. You might want to expand. So add a through. Like, that's my big ask there, because it's really frustrating when you have to, like, I'm not even gonna pull it out, but there's like a knot of MIDI splitter stuff.
Yeah. I mean, that's one thing I think for a while there I was just so still getting used to like just control voltage, right? Like I didn't even connect any of my stuff via MIDI at all for a super long time, and it wasn't until probably a year ago that I really just decided to connect everything through MIDI.
Right, and I think in a lot of ways control voltage is a lot simpler. I don't have any outside of the BeatStep Pro. I don't really have any CV sequencers, and the BeatStep Pro is not, I would say, the best because you can't. Everything's quantized through the BeatStep Pro, versus like if I want like slightly out of tune D or something, right? Like microtone stuff, you can't really do that with BeatStep Pro.
For whatever reason, the BeatStep Pro, the way it like notes will like kind of bleed into each other. I almost kind of like it. It almost has its own, like very much some of the sounds you'll hear in many of the songs I make will have a similar sound that's all coming from the BeatStep Pro, and it's not just the oscillator, it's the way that the sequencer does its magic, I guess. I don't know.
Right. Since we're getting real nerdy, I've played with a few sequencers, and I will say the Pyramid, while a little clunky, has the best like gate length control of the ones I've used. Like we're talking like OPZ and like this built-in sequencers and all this stuff, and in the BeatStep Pro, and this one in particular I like because it doesn't assume it's going to be monophonic or polyphonic, where the BeatStep Pro is monophonic, but it also that allows me to, like, if I go in and like pick a note here and hold it down, you won't be able to see it on the screen, so I'm not going to change the camera. But if I actually have to twist a knob to set the length per note, and I can do it to multiple notes at once or every note on the sequence if I want like everything to bleed into each other. But what I could do with that is, say, have a note on the MIDI log come in that just carries through about halfway through the sequence, and during that other notes come in, which on a monophonic synthesizer like the MS-10 means it won't re-trigger the ADSR, so you'll get like sort of smoother sequences, if that makes sense. Like it's not doing the attack as much, which means the sustain's lower, and you just get this like smoother sequence. So it's really nice for that kind of a thing.
Well, I definitely think that and I'm not sure exactly where this comes from, but all your sounds are very crisp. I have a really good sense, and I use a lot of reverb in all my stuff anyways, to kind of, which has its own kind of muddy effect. But all of your sounds are very distinct, and I can definitely tell kind of, where every sound is kind of coming from. And that's something that I kind of aspire to be better at, to kind of really have that kind of separation and clarity between sounds, you know.
There's some tricks I do for that. One, I don't touch the reverb too much. Oh, I forgot to do cool reverb things. No, that's on the other track. We'll do that later. Yeah, I don't touch the reverb too much unless it's more of like an ambient or a slower track.
Yeah.
So like the faster track, like there's no reverb on the bass or anything.
Yeah.
Two, I use a lot of resonance in that track on just about everything, which means that like for the bass line, like if I'm like this one, right? Yes, it's got bass, but it's also got a lot of resonance going, so that resonance pokes through because it's a higher pitch. There's that higher pitch frequency attached to it, and that higher pitch helps separate things. So if I've got that bass line going along with like this, which isn't really, I don't know, it's like a mid line or something, you get both of them interplaying.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things I do.
Sometimes what if it gets too bad, I'll just in the post I'll kind of, you know, drop the EQ it down a little in the middle to get some separation. But I don't know. So this kind of leads me in my next question is, did you come to synthesizers from another instrument, or was this something that you kind of came to like from piano or from?
Yes and no. Like I had learned other instruments before this. I did not get into synthesizers because of other instruments, if that makes sense. Like in high school, I got into electric guitar, played a lot of guitar, didn't touch it for like a decade, completely forgot how to play guitar, and then like had some free time, so I picked up, I swapped out some guitars, and like refreshing your instruments builds excitement. So I got like guitar, banjo, ukulele, not at the same time, but like those really refreshed like playing with stuff again. And I play with those all off and on. But the thing that really did it was this gateway drug here.
Teenage Electronics? Teenage Engineering, right?
Teenage Engineering's Pocket Operator Speak. I saw it at like, I feel like we were on like a trip to go climbing or Via Ferrata or some outdoor thing. And it was in like one of those stores where, like in ski towns that you can't afford anything in there. And it was definitely way overpriced there. I didn't buy it there, but that's where I first saw and heard of it. And I was like, oh, that seems pretty cool. I like the aesthetic. It's PCB. Looks like it's a fun thing. I got to play with it a little bit there. And so I ended up ordering one, and then this all happened, and I have no money anymore. But like, I found that while playing is really expressive on guitars and instruments like that, I really enjoy that expressiveness, like bending a note, like there's just a lot more human feel to that. I'm much better at programming in sequences, like if that makes sense. Like, it's a lot of fun to do. It's really like, and that's where all this came from. Is like I got attached to like programming in sequences. And as a side note, the reason I do have a full 88 keyboard over there is not because I'm good at piano. It's because I'm trying to learn at least the basics. Yeah. Because again, like anyone that's picked up a guitar as a teenager probably has a similar experience, unless their parents like got them good lessons, is that you learn from guitar tabs. You don't learn any music theory. You learn that like Nirvana's 4 power chords and you're good. Like you're off to the races. You can make like really cool sounds, hit the distortion pedal, like Money Pit, like all that stuff. Like you don't learn any music theory if you're trying to do it on your own as much. So I've been doing a lot of that, learning some music theory, playing with and trying to understand like various time signatures and things like that. So this has all been a learning experience for me. So that's why I keep going, because I learn stuff every time. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I had a similar experience. I played other instruments, and then particularly like growing up in the 90s or whatever, it's like the idea that you'd have music theory was just like kind of obscene, I
had an epiphany that like my music doesn't need to be Beethoven, right? Like I don't need to be that clever or brilliant with my writing. Like I'm making stuff that makes me happy, which oftentimes is like one note that's like See, I can't even hit the right key, but like it's like one note as the melody, right? Like you don't need to get that complex with a lot of stuff.
Yeah, I think you're totally right to say that you don't, like sometimes less is more, and you don't need to be like maybe virtuosity is not the same thing as knowing a couple really cool tricks of where to go,
right.
like, or where to go next, or how to like establish a mood, you know?
Right.
You know?
Right. And then there's the like the making of or behind the scenes. Like I hopped on some calls with some folks yesterday and the day before to sort of test drive some of this stuff. But like they got to see some of the more like making of stuff where I'm like trying to figure out a melody, and like trying to resolve a melody can be really tricky, especially if you're in a strange key or if you hit a chord you really like and you like know in your head there's a resolution somewhere. You just can't quite find it. That's where music theory has been really helpful. Like I'll do a quick Google, like figure out like, okay, I'm here on the circle of fifths or whatever the thing is, and try to like
for sure
use at least their hints to help me resolve it instead of beating my head against a wall.
Well, Frederick, I think you wanted to talk about design. I think we have time to talk about design a little bit, or...
What I wanted to talk about was, you know, I've watched a lot of your stuff, you know, and whether on like What the Heck, which is something we'll talk about in a second, but you sometimes will comment on design. Like people will be talking about how something sounds, or people will be talking about, you know, whatever, and then you'll make some kind of comment about, oh, that's got really good design. And I've heard you bring it up a couple times, which got me thinking that, oh, this guy must be, familiar with the design world. And that's a kind of conversation that I've never really had with another synthesizer player. Is for me both kind of like whether it's like workflow and functionality, or also the kinds of aesthetics that come with the design of modules, whether it's something that's more like the 5U units or the ones that you have, which are the kind of like these big monstrous cable, you know, things, or like the Euro rack that like love all the little blinking lights that make it look like a Star Trek, like old, you know, 65 Star Trek dashboard or whatever. And there's something about the aesthetics of and the design of modules that I think is really appealing to a lot of people. I don't know. I feel like that it has a draw to it, perhaps that other instruments don't. I don't know. I was wondering what you thought about.
Yeah, so there's very few instruments that I have that I think are perfect. The MS-10 is maybe the only one, because there's a few things that I think about when I think about the design of them. Like one, above all else, it has to do what I expect without getting in my way. And that expectation is going to be per person, right? Like I expect to be able to quickly hit the cutoff and like do some things with that, like do some pulse width modulation. It does all the things I need to. I don't have to futz with it. Like I can very quickly make the sound do what I want on this instrument. On these other instruments, pretty much across the board, there's always something getting in my way, or some piece of it that I find frustrating. Modular is interesting to me because I can build my own instrument using the modules, either that I've chosen because they will do what I expect or what I want to, or B, I can make my own in this case. So that's like the primary reason I'm loving modular is I can build my own instrument. Like I've built it to where the things that I do the most are very accessible. Even diving through cables is still better than like going through a menu or remembering a hotkey or something, right? Like, and you can do a lot of things. Like if you've listened to Rage Against the Machine, Tom Morello plays the pickup switch where you can switch between pickups. He'll turn one pickup all the way off and play it like a pick, like he's playing that as an instrument. And I think that philosophy can be carried into the instrument you make. So like in this case, I can play a lot of these switches. In fact, on a mixer I made, I changed the switches I used to be ones that also have temporary on. I can use it as a trigger in a lot of different ways. So I can quickly trigger, like if I've got a signal split going through a delay and through a clean, I can very quickly trigger that super feedbacked delay to get some really interesting patterns in there, like things like that. You can play it in ways that you want to play it.
Well, it's like
that means that some modules that are popular you may not like. So Morphogene I've been picking on lately. It's an amazing module, but it's not a module that does what I want to do right now. So it's on my maybe sell list. Yeah, it's an amazing module, but it's not as fast for me as like hitting the triple splashback delay. I can really get some crazy stuff out of that instantly. I know what I want out of it, and I can do it. So like, it's about the design of what I expect, right? And so I can change that. I love that with modular. Like, here's a closer view, and you can even maybe see scale. Like under these wires here, this is Euro rack size and just this little rectangle, and the rest is Kosmo. So that's 64 HP, about this wide.
Yeah.
And the scale is another thing for me that I really like, because it's really quick to just like go in and like mess with stuff without having to I don't know, worry about it too much. It's not really a problem with Euro rack. It's more of like a necessity, is that there's a lot of controls packed into a very small space. Like if you're looking at maths, I think I counted it up because I was debating modifying it to be Kosmo format. It's like 40 holes for the LEDs and the potentiometers and the buttons and the mounting holes. Like, there's no way I'm going to be able to do that in a timely manner, so that's why maths lives in this.
Well, you don't want to go too fast either. Like, you can, sometimes with those little knobs, you move it just a millimeter.
And so those are the things I think about in terms of design. Also, the panel has to be black to make it into my system, or I will make it black if it's that big of a module.
My music partner James is the same way.
I will say that I'm debating making a Euro rack skiff, because there's folks like Winter Bloom and Mutable Instruments that I love their stuff. And when I make that Euro rack case, it's going to be as colorful as possible. So
right.
The all black goes out the window for that.
Oh, you're going to spoil that. Well, that's awesome. So maybe we should see if anybody in the audience has any questions.
Cauldron of Bats asked, have I done a collaboration? I have done a couple, actually, using Sonobus and I think Zoom or whatever we're using. And one of which I did with Forstein and one with Alex Barnett. And with Alex, we tried to actually like tempo syncing, which is like next level. Like if you're doing more ambient stuff, you don't have to worry too much about tempo syncing. Like you can pick them or you can make them slightly off or whatever. You're making like a wall of sound that's interesting, and you can do all sorts of fun stuff. And there's a few tricks you can do with that in terms of like organizing. Like, okay, I'm going to play stuff that's melodic right now. You handle the droney, like heavy ambient stuff or noise or whatever the thing is, and then you reverse roles. So that's one way to handle it. But I've found the lag is a little rough. So like tempo syncing with Alex was a little rough, but there are a few moments on that stream. It's on EMS where we like, even with the lag, managed to like do drops together across our systems, which is pretty fun. Like when you get it just right, like you can see both people on camera surprised and stoked at the same time. Like, I can't believe that worked. Awesome.
Right. In some ways, if the collaboration is a performance, then you don't really need to hear what I'm doing in some ways. If you see what I'm saying, like you could just, what you have to play, and then your partner can play on top of that and have that mixed channel be what goes on.
You've just reinvented sea shanty TikTok.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's exactly right. Like I play something, you're essentially like recording and adding to it, because you don't have to worry about latency on your end.
Right.
And then, in theory, if you played that back, a third person or whatever could play it. And yeah, it's really fun to do. Like, I have the Zoom L12 mixer, which has great USB audio stuff. But what I like to do when I'm working on stuff down here is, like, if anyone's streaming and I'm interested, I'll open the stream and send that audio to my mixer. So like, if I get stuck, I'll hit unmute, listen to them, jam out for a little while, and then mute them and go on, with whatever I was doing. And yeah, it's really fun to play along sometimes. That's harder to do live. Like if you have
two people, like let's say I wanted to hear what you're playing. This is where Sonobus sort of takes the audio from me, takes the audio from you, glues it together, and sends it to both of you. So you're hearing yourself a little bit later. So like if you're playing a guitar riff to a beat, really impossible.
Yeah.
Because you're like, when you strum, a fraction of a second later, then you hear the strum. It's super strange. So that's why like doing a drop at the same time was so amazing, because we're like, I don't know, I think it's about right here. Like trying to predict like when it happens. And part of that's probably my internet. Like I'm in the mountains, so I get what I get.
Yeah. Well, great. Did you want to kind of plug? I really, just for all of you who are out there, What the Heck is a show that is on Earth Modular Society's YouTube page. It's something that I watch every week, but I would love to hear from the horse's mouth a little bit about it and when it is and all that jazz.
What the Heck is What the Heck? It's a weekly show similar to this. It's every Wednesday at 10 p.m. Eastern, at least currently. The time may change as we get more people involved, especially if we want to do like get like folks in Europe on the show. There might be like a morning edition, etc.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's on the EMS channel, and we talk about largely modular stuff. It can be pretty abstract. We might talk about we've talked about pedal design, we've talked about modules, we've talked about upcoming gear or newly released gear like the Strega. We just talked about, and the chip that powers it, that's also in there somewhere. Things like that, like it's just a hangout, very casual. I try to have different guests pretty regularly, and it seems interest in that is growing. It just started not because I wanted to like do a show. It's just I wanted to hang out with some people that I'd been, seeing their stuff and like talk shop, right? Like we're all trapped in our apartments, and like I live in the mountains. There's not a lot of modular people like next door. Well, there might be, I just don't know. And so like I think one night during a very hilarious stream, I think Alex was streaming, and we were all drinking, I think, and the chat, those of us in the chat were just like telling Alex what to patch basically, and it was just absolutely hilarious. I was like, geez, I want to do that, but like let's just do that as a hangout, Zoom hangout, whatever, and like just hang out, talk shop, have a good time. So it's very low key, usually about an hour and a half. Yeah. Watch it if you want. If you don't want to, whatever.
Yeah.
You're the worst.
You're the worst. All right,
guys. Well, I think that with that, we're going to call it a night for this week. I'd like to thank everyone for watching there in your various states of confinement. I'd like to thank Frederick Foxtrott for making all that great music, and thank you to heckseven for being hopefully the first of many times you come on the show, because people really liked it and I like listening to it, and it's all about my self-gratification. So anyway, and yeah, anything in the episode comments, if you want to hear about themes or genres of music, let us know. If you want to know about the mods or the gear, look in the notes for the episode, and look for links to the Earth Modular Society there, and everything that Heck and Frederick were talking about today. And thank you so much for coming, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Y'all can hear this, right? Well, I can. end credits, right? Is anyone watching this still? If you're still watching this, comment.
Fuck it, we'll do it live. We'll do it live. I don't give a fuck.